Good afternoon, I'm Mo Sadiq and I'll be your room host for today. And for this session, Introduction to AWS Mainframe Modernization, please welcome Maurice Clark, our Mainframe Migration Specialist.
Thanks, Mo. First up, we wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we're meeting on, the Ngunnawal people. We wish to acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the life of this city and of this region. We would also like to acknowledge and welcome other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be attending today's event. Yamalundi, welcome. My name is Maurice Clark. I am a mainframe specialist solution architect in the AWS Worldwide Specialist Organisation, based here in Australia. And I'd like to talk to you about the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service. The AWS Mainframe Modernization Service is a platform for migration, modernization, execution, and operation of mainframe applications. And today I'd like to talk to you about the components of the service, the approach to using it, and how you can get started. At AWS, we are obsessed with our customers. We like to start with the customer and work backwards. And as such, we listen very carefully to our customers. And in recent times, we've been listening particularly closely to our customers who run some or all of their business applications on mainframe and mid-range systems. So that is IBM Z-Series mainframe systems and IBM AS400 and I-Series mid-range systems, as well as Unisys and Fujitsu mid-range systems. And we're hearing the same story over and over again. We're hearing of a long list of challenges that these customers are facing, and we're hearing of the risks that arise from these challenges. Scalability, for example, is something we hear very frequently. One of the things we learned at the start of the pandemic was how critical the need for scalability is. Mainframes typically have finite resources, and you can have trouble managing large spikes in workload. And we're hearing about skills shortages, the highly skilled technical resources required to install, customize, manage, tune, and fix these systems. They're getting harder and harder to find as people with these skills retire. And we hear of technical debt and application complexity. The list goes on. So as a corollary to these points, we hear of our customers' desire for modernization. And there's three key drivers that the customers are stating for modernization. Customers want to increase agility, agility being the ability for businesses to respond to change inexpensively and quickly. Mainframe applications can have complex dependencies and slow application release cycles that hinder agility. Customers want to reduce cost. Mainframe hardware is expensive, but mainframe software is more expensive. Reducing costs allows customers to reinvest in the business and innovate. And we're hearing, of course, that customers want to mitigate against risk. They cannot risk any core application processing, and they must find ways to mitigate any risk or disruption to the business. There's a few common questions that arise as well when customers look to modernize mainframe applications. For example, what about my non-functional requirements? Security, high availability, scalability, system management, all the things that mainframes have traditionally offered. Or how do I design a cloud infrastructure that meets all of these requirements? Which migration tool chains or migration patterns should I consider? And what are the tools that are best suited to help me modernize my application? How do I move my data from a disk array into the cloud? And how do I convert from EBCDIC to ASCII? And how do I run a Kix COBOL transaction on x86 architecture? And once again, how do I do all this whilst minimizing risk to the business? So after hearing all this from our customers and drawing on our deep culture of innovation at AWS, we set about helping these customers. In 2020, we launched the AWS Mainframe Migration Competency, recognizing the mature practices, technology, and proven customer success of our partners with mainframe capabilities. In 2021, we launched the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service in order to simplify and accelerate the projects for these migration teams. And in 2022, The AWS Mainframe Modernization Service is GA and ready to roll in the Sydney region. So this is not just a migration service. The AWS Mainframe Modernization Service is a platform for migration, modernization, execution, and operation of your mainframe applications. So one of the main goals of this service is to simplify and accelerate modernization projects. And there's distinct phases on any modernization journey. So during the analyze phase, this is where we collect artifacts, we assess dependencies and complexity. This is where most of our planning is done. During the develop phase, this is the actual migration phase. So we may do some recompilation, conversion, data format adaptations, creating target infrastructure, whatever work is required to create the target application. During the deploy phase, this is specific to the managed service. This is execution and runtime, so creating the runtime environment. And during the operate phase, this is where you're operating your application through the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service. So you're operating your application via the console, logs, monitoring, etc. And we have an automate phase here. So we introduce a DevOps pipeline into this model so you can accelerate the speed at which you build and deploy applications. And here we automate as much as possible through this service. So post-initial migration, for example, you may want to reanalyze parts of your application for further enhancements to the application. There are some key benefits that we're expecting for our customers that utilize the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service. Agility. One of the main reasons people are moving to the cloud. So customers can quickly and inexpensively respond to change and utilize on-demand resources. So all the resources in the service are provided on demand. So within a few minutes, you can launch an instance of an analyzer environment or a developer environment or a runtime environment, and you can do that across multiple regions globally. This is a managed service, so it's minimizing operational complexity, so the customer can focus on business value and remove long-term procurement. There is no need for the customer to deal with the undifferentiated heavy lifting of the infrastructure, the installation, operation, and maintaining mainframe hardware and software. Another key benefit is that we're using proven tool chains here. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're using proven tool chains for replatforming and refactoring. We're supporting the refactoring with our own Blu Age toolset and replatforming through our partnership with Micro Focus, combining the strength of these modernization tools with the strength of the AWS infrastructure. Another key benefit, the quality of the service. We know mainframe customers have stringent non-functional requirements, and the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service is designed to meet and exceed these requirements. That is security, high availability, scalability, systems management. And this is fast modernization. Our tool chains employ evolutionary modernization, minimizing risks. So there's no risky rip and replace or no big bang migrations here. We're modernizing the existing artifacts using proven technologies. And of course, cost is a key benefit. We're providing a pay-as-you-go model. A lower cost of entry makes it easier to experiment and innovate and dynamically adapt to load. There's no need to size for peak workloads anymore. So exactly what's inside the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service? Well, this graphic helps to explain what is inside the service and what is not. Inside the managed service, we're starting with foundational components, an analyzer tool, converter tools, developer tools, a compiler, and runtime environments for either test or production workloads. Additionally, there are some components that are outside of the service, object storage, file storage, CI/CD pipeline, and there are AWS integrated components for security, monitoring, logging, etc. So most mainframe workloads will require other tools, like a batch scheduler or some output management, and these capabilities are not within the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service at this time. So to reiterate, the AWS Mainframe Modernization service, we're focusing on the application code and the runtime environments. Importantly, the application data will be in the cloud also, but outside of the service. So this allows you a wider choice of options when it comes to data placement, so RDS, CFS, EBS, etc. And this tool chain is replicated across the two patterns that we support, both the replatform and the refactor. So digging a little deeper into the two migration and modernization patterns that we support, here's a look at what's going to change in each case. So on the left, we see a typical mainframe stack, although mainframers wouldn't use the word stack. Mainframe hardware at the bottom, a Z15, for example, your mainframe OS, something like ZOS, application middleware, KICS, MQ, database and files, things like DB2, IMS, vSAM, sequential files. And you have your application code running alongside it, typically COBOL, often, sometimes PL1, and utilities employed by the application, system utilities like dfsort, idcams, dfdss, IBGenna, and the data format, which is uniquely EBCDIC. And at the top, we're sitting with the business function, ERP, payroll, whatever. So in the middle, when you do replatforming, so we preserve the application artifacts and the data. And the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service Managed Runtime replaces the middleware and the operating system APIs needed by the application. So we do reporting and code adaptations are made. The underlying stack is modernized onto x86-based architecture. In a refactoring pattern, all of the application artifacts are transformed. New code and new data format. So we're using conversion to popular languages and frameworks, Java, Spring Boot, Angular frameworks, providing functional equivalence. Once again, the underlying stack is modernized onto x86-based architecture, infrastructure. And in both cases, of course, the business functions stay the same. Digging a little further still, let's look at the refactoring option available with the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service. The AWS Mainframe Modernization Service components are used for transformation and runtime. So we can convert COBOL or PL1 to Java services, and JCL batch jobs are converted to scripts. This process generates modern code, data access, data format, and dependencies all together. So as of late last year, Blu Age is now part of the AWS family. The refactoring pattern in the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service is supported by the Blu Age tools, such as Blu Insights, Blu Age Analyzer, and the Blu Age Velocity. Blu Age not only came on board with a great set of tools, but also with a professional services capability. And the Blu Age toolset in its entirety is included in the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service. So during initial assessment of an application, Blu Insights, which is a web application, is used to import a zip file of application artifacts, source code, copybooks, BMS maps, KICS CSD, JCL listcats for vSAM files, etc. And it analyzes doing many things. So it's doing things like counting lines of code, including blanks and comments, because they are equally important, counting if statements to assess cyclomatic complexity, counting conditions, checking for homonyms, programs of the same name. It does dependency analysis, identifying endpoints and entry points. Once that refactoring is done, we can then start our tool calibration in two phases. So we have an automated reverse engineering phase, which creates an application model with program and data dependencies and a detailed strategy. We then do an automated forward engineering process, which involves extensive testing, quality gates, and tuning of the transformation rules. So your COBOL, PL1, JCL, KICS, DB2 artifacts will be automatically refactored into web front-end Java services and batch scripts. So if your mainframe application has 3270 screens for user, display, or input, these will become HTML web screens. You can also see here that The user data is outside of the service and also the batch scheduler in this case. And because you're creating Java services in this instance, which have a REST interface, you may also be using an API gateway service to call the services, and a load balancer to front end your online workloads that are being transformed. So, in summary, this is a fast and coherent transformation of code, data, and dependencies altogether. For the replatforming pattern, we partner with Micro Focus. Micro Focus have decades of successful implementations behind them. They are a leader in the replatforming of mainframe applications, modernising both COBOL and PL1 applications. The steps involved in replatforming are a detailed compatibility assessment, followed by a complete code recompilation. The programs are then incrementally migrated and thoroughly tested. So the mainframe compatible runtime, in this instance, provides middleware, operating system APIs, index file access, transactions, screens and maps, temporary storage, batch, etc. So all of the dependencies that are required for the COBOL PL1 JCL are being provided by the runtime environment. You'll notice with replatforming, we're not transforming the whole stack in the same way we did with refactoring. We still have a transaction manager in the runtime instance, similar in functionality to Kix, and we have a batch subsystem similar in functionality to JES and SDSF. So how do we get there? Same steps as I mentioned before: analyze, develop, deploy. The Micro Focus Enterprise Suite is a group of interrelated products that help assess and analyze the application in order to recompile it from Z-COBOL to ANSI COBOL and run on x86 architecture. So the Enterprise Analyzer is a deep dive analysis tool that presents application intelligence. So once discovery is complete, it allows you to visualize the mainframe applications, and it draws code flows, connections between programs and lines of code, to data sets, to Kix transactions, etc. It helps generate business rules from the application code. The Enterprise Developer is an Eclipse-based IDE for Micro Focus COBOL, a far cry from the 3270 interfaces that most of these programs would have been developed and maintained on. And the Enterprise Server is the actual middleware emulation code. So with this approach, the customer is building on what they have. Once again, in summary, the mainframe application code is completely reported and entirely recompiled onto mainframe-compatible runtime. So what do we mean by a managed service? So this is infrastructure, resources, extensive automation for compute instances, storage cache, and easier interfaces, being the AWS console, AWS command line, and AWS APIs. Just to be clear, I'm not talking about a managed service offering here. There's no staff augmentation or outsourcing. The AWS Mainframe Modernization service allows customers to remove the undifferentiated heavy lifting of managing their infrastructure and to focus on building new business capabilities and innovations. So there's no procurement of licenses. Things like monitoring and logging are enabled and configured for you. There's no need to worry about managing high availability or scalability. This graphic helps us compare levels of responsibility across an on-premises mainframe environment, across a normal AWS EC2 environment implementation, and the new AWS Mainframe Modernization service. So on the left, we have a on-premises mainframe. You have to manage power, cooling, hardware, the hypervisor or Prism, the operating system. The entire stack from top to bottom is yours to manage. If you pick up a mainframe application and move it through some manipulation to an AWS EC2 environment, we take care of the layer lowers of the infrastructure, the data center, the racks, the hypervisor, the compute, etc. But the customer is still responsible for the OS and everything on top of it. Licensing, procuring software, installation, patching, monitoring, configuring scalability, managing HA. So there's still a lot of responsibility for you to take care of. However, When you move to the managed service, a lot of this work is done for you. So we're removing the burden of managing the infrastructure. Licensing, for example, you don't have to procure software licenses from Blu Age or Micro Focus. They're included in the AWS Mainframe Modernization service. Likewise with monitoring, it's all enabled for you and configured to push to CloudWatch. This makes things much easier. Same with HA, or high availability. Rather than you having to configure across multiple availability zones and all the networking that is required with that, it's all done for you. So the goal here is to allow you, the customer, to just focus on the applications and the business functions and on innovating and building new capabilities. So once again, the AWS Mainframe Modernization service is not just a migration service. It enables migration, modernization, execution, and operation of your mainframe applications. We recognize that it can be complex to design and operate a cloud environment that meets and exceeds the requirements of a mainframe workload. So that's what the AWS Mainframe Modernization service is designed to address. And a few things of note about the runtime architecture here. And this is where AWS brings value and experience, because we've been running enterprise workloads in the AWS cloud for a long time. The topology I'm showing here is a highly available environment, but you could run something similar in a standalone if required for dev test. Looking at some of the components outside the service, I've already mentioned that the data is going to be outside and the batch scheduler or any output and print management. But there are native integrations with other AWS services. So for example, on the security side, there are native integrations with IAM and Cognito, making it easier to perform authentication and authorization management. There's encryption of data in transit and at rest. There is CloudTrail for auditing, GuardDuty for threat detection, Secrets Manager, config, etc. Likewise, for monitoring and logging, there's native integration with CloudWatch. So you get the metrics and build your own dashboard. For logging, you'll get everything pushed to CloudWatch logs. For cost and usage management, you'll be able to leverage tags. You can do consolidated billing on all the resources that are being consumed by the AWS Mainframe Modernization service. So as I said, the AWS Mainframe Modernization service is designed to meet and exceed the requirements of mainframe workloads. So this means for HA, we deploy the instances across multiple availability zones, and you have auto-scaling to address workload growth and scalability and elasticity. This is providing both horizontal and vertical scaling. Additionally, you have the flexibility to change instance types, instance type and size should the need arise. So if you have a requirement for more compute, memory, I/O, or if you have a different workload profile, you can just choose the instance type you need. So we believe it's important that customers can see how they can further modernize once they have migrated to the AWS cloud and make their applications more agile. The AWS Mainframe Modernization service is designed to facilitate modernization, and here we see a typical modernization path. This shows an overview of how to fast-track mainframe workloads towards agility, the evolution from mainframe to agile services. Starting on the left, a mainframe monolith application. Typical mainframe applications are tightly coupled with a shared data store and what we consider a single-tier application. The first phase is migration and API enablement. This is your initial migration into the AWS cloud via the analyze, develop, and migration phases that I've mentioned previously. So once your application is in the AWS cloud, the tool chain will allow you to implement API enablement, so your application can be called via REST interfaces, for example. And this is what we call macro services or coarse-grained infrastructure. The second phase is a further optimization of some of these into microservices. But in this phase, only some services, not all services, are optimized into microservices. We only extract microservices where and when it makes sense to do so. And the AWS Mainframe Modernization service provides capabilities for this entire journey. Why microservices first? Well, they provide agility attributes in the short term and tools for minimizing risk. So once you've migrated to a modern stack, the transition to microservices is easier. You can enable new use cases and innovations sooner. Why not microservices first? Well, it's simply not suitable for all workloads. It can add complexity and there can be a lot of moving parts. Manual re-engineering is risky and expensive to do up front. Doing data extraction and program extraction is difficult. So overall, this approach provides agility in the short term with macroservices and facilitates the transition to microservices when it is appropriate to do so. So here's a view of the first phase of modernization. Not only quick migration, but also modernization in many areas. So once you've done your first migration and modernization, this is what your initial results would look like. You see the AWS Mainframe Modernization service componentry, the analyzer, the IDE, the compiler, the runtime. All these resources are available on demand. You have your test environment and your production environment. On the left, we see a pipeline following DevOps best practices. The AWS Mainframe Modernization service provides a CloudFormation template for this pipeline. And from the pipeline, you can deploy into either test or production runtime environments. You can see we have a managed data store environment here for broad data access. In the center, we have the migrated application and macroservices deployed on managed elastic runtime and managed data stores. On the right, innovations that can immediately access the macroservices, business functions or data directly. And at the bottom, some key components for systems management. These facilitate security, auditing, monitoring, logging, infrastructure as code capabilities, and pay as you go. So once this topology is active, you can start innovating. You can employ the API gateway, for example, to make services available to mobile applications. You could create new microservices, possibly onto serverless Lambda. You could start doing data analytics or some machine learning. The best part of this architecture is that it provides the agility attributes needed by mainframe workloads. So not only a small portion of the workload, but for all of the business functions that are part of the workload migrated to AWS. So it provides all of this business value in a short term using a tool-based migration approach that minimizes risk. So I just want to quickly review some of these agility benefits. Starting from the left, we see that we're using knowledge-based development. This is referring to the analyzer tools, modernizing legacy applications. It can be complex to understand all of the dependencies and the impacts of code changes in a mainframe application. So the analyzer tool can help you quickly realize the impact of changes so you can quickly make decisions. This will accelerate the decision-making process, right, and allow you to make changes with confidence. And we're using a modern IDE here, either Visual Studio or Eclipse-based development. So you get features like smart editing, instant compilation, local debugging, unit testing, and again, further accelerating your development. The DevOps pipeline brings further agility still. And we're employing on-demand disposable servers here. So for spinning up a dev test environment, if you need more, you just create more, allowing for what-if scenario testing and accelerating testing capabilities. Elasticity via auto-scaling groups. You can expand or shrink the environment as the business requirements and the workloads change. So this applies to both test and development and production. Resources for new projects can be provisioned quickly and easily. You also get a choice, as I said, of compute or data storage. This is important because if you have a different workload or a new workload profile that requires specific compute configurations, more memory, faster storage, With the managed service, it's very easy to change that compute instance type. A few mouse clicks, restart the instance, and away you go. We've got a full suite of innovation tools available here: data analytics, machine learning, etc. I've already mentioned that you can quickly API enable and allow access to other innovations that may be running elsewhere in your infrastructure. We have broad data store access for block, file, and object storage. This means you're not locked into esoteric data types such as vSAM, which is difficult to access off a Z-series. Once your data store has been modernized, you can quickly gain access to it for other purposes. And we're using consumption-based pricing, pay-as-you-go pricing. So having a low cost of entry helps drive experimentation and innovation. And we're using pervasive automation and infrastructure as code via cloud formation templates. Again, increasing the velocity of your operations. And we have centralized operation for security, auditing, monitoring, logging. So in summary, you can see that the AWS Mainframe Modernization service provides plenty of agility gains for the mainframe workloads. And all of this agility is available with a short-term migration. So the AWS Mainframe Modernization service is now generally available in the Sydney region, accessible via the AWS console. There are demonstration tutorials available, and both of the tool chains that I've mentioned are now available from AWS, so you can start projects now. A quick word about pricing. As I've mentioned, we are providing a pay-as-you-go pricing model. A pay-as-you-go pricing model is based on instance type and size in a similar fashion to other AWS services. And we also provide discounts for 1-year and 3-year timeframe commitments. Additionally, there are multiple tools available at no additional charge, like the analyzer and the build tools. And just to reiterate once more, AWS provides for both infrastructure and software licenses. So for example, with Micro Focus, you come straight to AWS. We are a one-stop shop for all of your software licensing, and all available on demand. So we have a very structured approach to share with our customers who are considering a migration project based on the Migration Acceleration Program, or MAP, specifically for mainframe. So MAP comes from the distributed side of the house, and it's a comprehensive and proven cloud migration program that's based on AWS experience and best practices over thousands of migration projects. But this is a tailored version specifically for mainframe migration and modernization, with an emphasis on what's important for the success of a mainframe project. And this is all based on minimizing risk and increasing the likelihood of a successful project. MAP is based on 6 primary pillars. First, it's a strong methodology. It relies on using proven tools from AWS and partners, including the AWS Mainframe Modernization service. It relies on the expertise of AWS partners. It also relies on the expertise of AWS professional services. It relies on and encourages training. And there are AWS investments that are available to help customers succeed in these projects. So all of this helps to reduce risk and increase the velocity for mainframe projects. Looking a little deeper into the MAP methodology, our very structured approach starts with the assess phase, followed by the mobilize phase, and then we move on to the migrate and modernize phase. The assess phase is primarily a scoping exercise for what follows. So this includes high-level discovery, business case estimates to ensure alignment, pattern and tool chain guidance, and providing a high-level understanding about how we approach mainframe modernization and migration. This will lead quickly into the mobilize phase, and one key element of the mobilize phase is to ensure that the tool chain and the patterns that we choose are being calibrated and tested to ensure success and accuracy in the context of your specific application and data. So this means putting a very strong emphasis on a proof of concept or a pilot. And from this proof of concept, we will gather sufficient learnings and data to decide if we can indeed do what the customer requires, or if we have to consider other options. This will also help us understand how fast we can move with the next phase when doing the migration at scale. This is also where we may fine-tune the business case, work on the target architecture and the migration plan, etc. In order to minimize mainframe modernization project risks, we highly recommend that you engage specialists who are trained and experienced with the tool chains. So either mainframe competent partners or mainframe AWS specialists. So in recent years, AWS has enabled, trained, and hired many mainframe specialists. We also have many roles available to assist you with projects at different stages, depending on where you're at with your mainframe modernization journey, be it early assessment, design, POC, migration at scale, or modernization best practices. And we have coverage for both customers and partners in various sectors across public sector, commercial, and FSI. And we have coverage, of course, globally with specialists all around the planet. So this is a significant investment from AWS for us to best support our customers. And we are very fortunate to have great partners to assist us with our customers. And most of them are part of the AWS Mainframe Migration Competency Program. And we expect them to be the primary users of the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service for delivering mainframe migration projects. So all of these partners have collaborated for the launch of the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service in a couple of ways, both via enablement of partners and via their feedback being incorporated. And we have an ongoing developing and collaboration for creating more joint value to our customers. And you should expect new offerings and solutions becoming available around the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service. So once again, unless you have prior experience and expertise with these mainframe migration tool chains, we recommend you engage these partners and/or AWS specialists. So here's a few links for you to take away as well and to learn more about the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service. I have the links up here to the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service homepage and the AWS console itself, where there are some tutorials on the service. We have a link to the documentation for the service and some blog posts on mainframe modernization. And finally, there's a couple of links there highlighting both the Blu Age toolset and the Micro Focus toolset. And the requisite training slide. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the AWS Skill Builder and certifications. Follow that certification path. That's my advice. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for your time and attention. And please complete the session survey. Thanks very much.